Welcome to the Hard Hat Training Series. We have just a few minutes to cover the ins and outs of the required pre-shift or pre-trip inspection. I want to get right down to the point. I know these inspections can seem pointless, monotonous, repetitive, or even a waste of time. I've seen a lot of operators whip through them without really paying attention, more out of habit than anything. I've also seen even more skip them altogether. But the reality is, inspections are required of you daily because every day brings with it the potential for accident. That's the life of those working on or around heavy equipment. So under no circumstances should you skip or skimp when it comes to consistently and thoroughly inspecting your equipment prior to use. Inspections are preventative in nature, meaning if you do them right, they will prevent accidents from happening. They might even save your life or the lives of those you work with. Case in point, not long ago a worker was struck and killed by a forklift while he was adjusting a load. And how did this happen? It's easy to say negligence, but quite often it is so much more than that. In fact, there are always a lot of little things that lead to big accidents. In this particular case, investigators discovered that the parking brake wasn't working properly. To make matters worse, while the company had been performing pre-shift inspections, it wasn't on a regular basis. When inspections did happen, the parking brake wasn't tested. This oversight, among others, took the life of an experienced worker who was newly married. Hopefully, avoiding this kind of tragedy is the reason we will be walking you through how to do a pre-shift inspection, what to look for, and what to do if you find something wrong. Of course, like any task, before you begin, you need to make sure you have the appropriate gear for the job. Most often that entails PPE like a hard hat, safety glasses, gloves, and steel-toed boots. If you're working around other equipment that is coming and going, you'll want to have a high visibility vest too, or you'll want to mark off the area. You may also want or need things like ear protection or a mask to prevent the inhalation of dust or other harmful agents. Some other items will be helpful. We've laid them out on the table here. A flashlight so you can better see hoses and wiring, a wire brush to brush away any rust or dirt or buildup, a piece of cardboard, which we will discuss later, and of course a clipboard with an inspection checklist to properly record your observations. After all, doing the inspection ultimately means very little if you don't report your findings and act on them accordingly. You'll also want to make sure that you have the operator's manual handy and that any maintenance labels are readily available and legible. These are vital because they often contain the list of things you need to check as well as the manufacturer's recommendations for routine maintenance. With that in mind, let's go down the list. We're going to start with what is commonly called our key-off checks, meaning that these are things we can inspect without the equipment running. From there, we will move on to the key-on checks where we inspect the operational functionality of the forklift. The tires are a great place to start. Forklifts can have pneumatic or cushion tires, but either way, you should check them over thoroughly. Look for any signs of wear or damage that could affect performance and stability. This can include sufficient tread for the terrain, cuts or gouges in the rubber, embedded foreign material, missing bolts and nuts, cracked welds, and underinflation. Your inspection needs to cover the inside of the wheel too. Pay attention to the axles, hoses, bushings, and the overall structural integrity of the area. Take the time to clear away any built-up dirt so you can see things more clearly. While you're there, check the chassis and welds. Welds cover the chassis and body of the forklift from front to back and top to bottom. You don't need to spend a ton of time here. You're basically looking for anything that jumps out as you as a serious or potentially serious crack. Do take the time to look at the undercarriage as well. As needed, take the time to brush away any dirt or rust in order to properly assess the integrity of a weld. It's not uncommon to find serious cracks forming underneath years of accumulated dirt and grime. Aside from the welds, look the body over for loose fasteners, damaged bolts, excessive rust, and any structural cracks. Never paint the wheels. This can cover up damage that can affect your safety. As you finish checking the chassis, take a few moments to inspect the mast. Masts can have a number of sections that are controlled by hydraulics and chains. It's imperative that these elements are in good condition so you can lift and handle materials safely. The chain should be properly lubricated and the roller should turn easily. Check the hoses for cuts, leaks, and general wear and tear. This goes for the lift cylinders as well. While you're at the front of the machine, inspect the forks. They are subject to a lot of wear and tear. Pay special attention to the width of the heel and shafts when inspecting them. These can come in contact with the ground and become worn. Fork tips too can be damaged and should be inspected for cracks, chips, and other signs of blunt force. It's not out of the ordinary to find bent forks. This can happen if an operator improperly engages a load or hoisted a load from the end of one of the forks, which is not approved. Never attempt to straighten a bent fork, just replace it. We sometimes see forks with holes drilled or cut into them. This is done for hoisting or towing purposes. However, you should never cut a hole at the end of a fork or use forks with holes in them. The carriage or backrest should be inspected too. If it's severely bent, it can make a load unstable, so make sure it doesn't have any significant damage. It's not uncommon to see a machine with labels that are covered by dirt, damaged or worn to the point of illegibility, or even missing entirely. We've even found labels that have been painted over and forgotten. It's easy to overlook replacing these labels, yet the standards require them to be present and legible. A quick call to the manufacturer will usually do the trick. This goes for capacity and maintenance labels too. The steps and handrails may seem of little consequence, but it isn't unusual to see them missing or damaged. As a result, it's typical to see operators get on forklifts in unstable positions to reach the next step and get up into the machine, resulting in injuries. Because slips, trips, and falls are a frequent catalyst for workplace accidents, that damaged step or handrail really should be repaired. While you're at it, clean off any buildup first. It might be hiding weaknesses or damage on the components. Check all of the linkage and grease points. Make sure that there are no seized pins or areas lacking lubrication, and that the overall structural integrity is still reliable. If more grease is needed, clean the area well and then add grease according to the manufacturer's guidelines. Too little naturally causes excessive wear, but too much can also result in energy loss, accelerated wear, and component failure. The axles and mast both have hydraulic components vital to the forklift's smooth, efficient, and safe operation. But it's not unusual for these components to be neglected. Inspect them for cracks, bends, or other damage that might prevent them from operating as intended. The hoses need to be checked for leaks too. If you see signs of leaking fluids, don't just put your hand back there. Even if you have a pinhole-sized leak, the extreme pressure in these hoses is enough to send that fluid stream straight through your skin, leading to extensive tissue damage and sometimes the complete loss of a finger, hand, or limb. It can even cause death. This is why you'll want the piece of cardboard or a clipboard we mentioned earlier. Just stick it behind the hose and check for any signs of leaking. There are a number of attachments that can be used with a forklift, all of which need to be thoroughly inspected before you use them. If any components show signs of damage that will prevent them from working properly or staying securely fastened to the forklift, don't use them. If you are using a personnel platform, the work surface, toe board, and handrails should all be free of rust, dents, and weld cracks. Any damage should be repaired before you use the forklift. Chains, bolts, and pins must be inspected and replaced if they are damaged or corroded. The load rating labels should be present and clearly state the load limit of the basket. Anchor points need to be inspected too. These are essential to protecting workers against falls. Anyone entering the personnel platform will need a personal fall arrest system, including a full body harness, lanyard, and appropriate connective devices. Don't neglect to inspect these important pieces of equipment. You may be using fork extensions. If so, make sure they're manufacturer approved. Inspect them for dents and other wear and tear. Any deficiencies should be fixed before you use them. The term ROPS stands for Rollover Protective Structure. This system is in place to protect you in case of an accident, and there are strict standards governing its structural integrity. If the ROPS has been compromised by way of a rollover or some other incident, then it shouldn't be used until it can be further inspected and approved by an engineer or appropriately fixed. There are several lights on a forklift, and they each have a specific purpose to increase visibility and extend vision, especially if you'll be operating at night or in a dark warehouse. Missing or broken lights are not unusual, but the standards require you change them out. Don't chance having an accident because you can't see clearly. Moving around to the back of the forklift, let's take a look at the engine compartment. The maintenance schedule in your operator's manual will guide you through checking the engine compartment. Sometimes you will also see labels affixed to the inside door of the compartment. These come with spaces where you can sign and date, signifying you have completed the inspection and required maintenance. You don't have to use them, but everyone on site should be on the same page. Too often we see maintenance labels that are partially filled out with 1 or 2 entries. As an inspector, it's hard to know then if these important inspections have been done at all since the last date. If you don't use them, make sure you have kept some sort of record. Everyone should know where to access it and how to fill it out properly. Clear away any excessive dirt or grime buildup, especially around the fans and batteries. Test the belts for proper tension and wear. Along with that, check any other wiring and hoses for cracks or leaks. Check to see that the fluids are sufficiently full. If any maintenance needs to be performed, make sure the forklift gets serviced as soon as possible by someone qualified to do so. Also, take the time to clean the hydraulic fluid level indicator. If you can't see it at a glance because it is dirty or damaged, then it isn't doing you much good. You should be able to easily discern the fluid levels. Pull out the air filters and clean them off or replace them as necessary. Forklifts can run off batteries, diesel, gasoline, liquid propane, or even a mix of these. If you use a liquid fuel, it should be topped off. If you find the battery needs charging, it will need to be replaced with a fully charged and cooled battery or charged on the machine. Whichever you do, only personnel who have been trained and authorized should charge or change a battery. They should also receive training regarding potential hazards and emergency procedures in the case of an acid splash or spill. If you're the person changing or charging the battery, don't forget to wear PPE so you're protected against the sulfuric acid in the battery. Always use the correct battery for your machine. A battery that is too light can seriously affect the stability of the machine and lead to a tip over. If you're using a propane tank, examine the hoses, fittings, and threads for cracks, leaks, or other damage. A quick trick for this is using a spray bottle full of soapy solution. Look for bubbles after you've sprayed an area. While you're at the back of the machine, check the counterweight. Make sure the appropriate approved weights are securely fastened. Remember, if your forklift isn't designed for added weight on the back, don't put any there. If your machine has a fire extinguisher in a designated box on the outside of the machine, make sure you can access it as needed. Of course, it should be in working condition and tested according to the standard. You do not want to discover the extinguisher isn't working or that you need a key to unlock it while you're trying to put out a fire. Now let's move back to the front of the forklift and check inside the cab. While we're there, we'll perform our key-on checks. These are all about testing the functionality to make sure the machine does what it's supposed to do. It's as simple as that. Of course, before moving into the cab, you will want to make sure you use 3 points of contact as you get inside. As we mentioned earlier, the operator's manual is required to be on the machine and in legible condition. Every operator should read and understand it, especially the section relating to hazards and safe operations. The simplest place to start our inspection is with the cab floor. It should be clean and clear of debris. It is common to see tools, trash, drink bottles, and even fire extinguishers spread across the floor, but these items need to be stowed properly so they don't distract the operator or impede pedal operations. If your forklift has one, make sure the seat is in good condition and can be easily adjusted to fit your needs. MSDs, or musculoskeletal disorders, are the single largest category of workplace and lost work time injuries. So take care of your back by making sure the seat is not falling apart. The seat belt is a device designed to save your life. If it is tearing or unable to lock in properly, it needs to be replaced. Some belts actually expire after a period of time, so you will want to be aware of any upcoming expiration dates. Just pull it out and check the tag on the side to know for sure. Like the exterior labels, warning labels on the inside of the cab are just as important and need to be replaced if missing or if the message or safety principle is no longer clear. Keep the glass and mirrors clean. Your ability to see clearly and instantly detect if there is something wrong could be the difference between a safe workplace and one prone to accidents. Cab filters should be checked and replaced regularly. The inner cab filters tend to be ignored most often, meaning they are not doing their job and the air inside the cab is not as comfortable nor as safe as it should be. As mentioned, the fire extinguisher needs to be in good working condition, tested appropriately, and affixed to the wall or in a designated box. Generally speaking, the instrument panel should be properly labeled. You need to know what each button, dial, lever, pedal, or switch does and what any indicators mean. You also need to take a moment to make sure these function as designed. More specifically, check the forward and reverse levers. On some machines, this is a switch located on the accelerator pedal. Whichever is the case for your specific machine, labels should clearly indicate the function of the levers or the switch. Test the tilt controls, the hoisting and lowering controls, and the controls for any attachments. Pay attention to the mast chains. Are they circulating properly? The hydraulic cylinders should open and close with ease and without delay. The horn can be an extremely important tool. Test it so you rely on it as needed to warn other vehicles or pedestrians of your presence. The mast controls need to be properly labeled too. Go through each of them to make sure they respond without delay or other issues. This, of course, holds true for any attachments you may be using too. Once they are connected, you should always test them before use. Raise the forks and extend the mast as high as it will go and lower it again to ensure it moves smoothly. Tilt the forks up and down and adjust their width in and out. The machine should respond appropriately. Make sure the mast chains circulate and that any hydraulic cylinders open and close on command and with ease. To further test the functionality of the machine, you will need to put it in motion. Find a level piece of ground. Drive the forklift forward and in reverse. Remember, the steering axle is in the rear. The forklift should steer and turn with ease. When backing up, make sure the backup camera and alarm are operational. The backup alarm must be operational and loud enough for others to hear. Check the acceleration and braking functions of the machine. If the forklift is sluggish in either of these functions, it is safer not to use it. The parking brake or P-brake also needs to be tested and proven to be in proper working order. And that's all there is to it. It doesn't have to be overly extensive. In fact, if you're doing them often and maintaining the machine or addressing issues as required, then your walk-around inspection becomes just that, a fairly quick walk-around. In all cases, if you find damage, record it and report it. If it poses a threat to safe operations, lock and tag out the machine. Find another one to use or suspend operations until the one you need is fixed. Too often we see operators justifying small issues in order to get the job done now. We understand the importance of time and efficiency and deadlines and money, but at the end of the day, these things pale in comparison to someone's health and well-being. Certainly, someone's life is worth more than deadlines and money as well. Remember, it is often several small issues that have been overlooked over time that collectively lead to one big accident. The pre-shift inspection is designed and required for the sole purpose of helping you discover and address those small issues so you can get your job done safely. Good luck and stay safe.